Well, thank you for holding on. I'm watching the participant number drop. As soon as you saw the economist was up, everybody had to leave the meeting. I get it. I understand how it is. I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about maximizing pasture profitability. Try and motivate you to understand why this is important, why you should care. A common phrase that I hear often is it's just pasture, right? It's what does it matter, right? It's not one of my cash crops. It's just there. But what I want you to be motivated to do is understand the economic value associated with everything that's been said so far. Properly managing, properly fertilizing, properly taking care of your pasture has some great economic benefits that you should be aware of. Now to start with, the question is how does pasture impact profitability? Now, we have to understand what profit is, and this is the common equation that's used in every business, right? Profit is equal to gross revenue minus total cost. Now, think about how you increase profit in your business. There's only a couple ways to do that. Gross revenue is simply price times quantity. So we can raise the price without affecting our quantity to increase profit. We can increase quantity but sell at the same price, or we can reduce total costs. So, and total costs, right? Total costs are comprised of both variable and fixed costs. So there's different methods, right, to increase profit. I wish those were all easy ways. When I say simply increase price, we all know how hard it is to increase price and increase quantity. But think about the interaction that improved pasture has on profit, right? Healthy pasture leads to healthy animals, right? So you may be able to sell both a higher quantity, right, when we look at quantity, and a healthier animal. So maybe a premium for if it's higher quality. On the cost side, especially these past couple of years, producers have been hammered on the price of feed, right? So feed costs have just killed the profitability of a lot of our cow-calf producers within the state. So think about, and I understand that there's often situations out of our control, but when you can properly manage that, you can decrease your feed costs. Now, let me tell you why. So this is a set of data that comes out of University of Minnesota, and this is Utah specific data. Total direct expenses or variable expenses. Now, this is a simple way to look at how we break down the top producers to the worst, not the least profitable to the most profitable. So think about that 10%, right? When I was in grade school and took standard exams, I was on the bottom end of these, right? And my friends were always on the top end, but it's that same principle, right? So the best to the least profitable. Now you can see those total direct expenses. I like to look at that 60 to 70%, right? That seems pretty reasonable, around that $500 to $450 per cow variable expense. So that would be your feed, labor, fuel, oil, fencing, pasture leases, all those variable expenses that go into producing an animal. Now, when we look at that breakdown, interestingly enough, we take that total direct expense, and this is how it breaks down. You'll notice that orange dominates this pie graph, right? I'm an economist. I love a great pie graph, right? And so you can see feed makes up roughly 68% of those variable costs. So when we talk about the impact of improving pasture, think about what a small change in pasture productivity would have on overall profitability as it decreases that feed cost. It has such a great impact on overall profitability of your production system. Now, another aspect of this, that was just variable costs. When we look at total cost, which is fixed and variable, think about the fixed cost associated with that pasture. Whether I graze one animal or 100 animals, there's still a fixed cost associated with that pasture, however many acres it may be. Now, when we talk about utilizing assets efficiently, the more animals we can place on there and graze that appropriately, right? Grant just talked about overgrazing, right? We know that the issues of overgrazing, so grazing it appropriately, you're utilizing that asset to its highest efficiency, thus decreasing those fixed costs, right? We're spreading those fixed costs over more animals, thus making it more economically efficient. But you can see that overhead, labor, right? Some of these fixed costs are come greatly into what those total costs are. Now, feed costs, right? I'm just reiterating what I've already said. Feed costs have continued to rise. So rise over the right. We started collecting this data back in 2004, and we know that feed costs, right, major driver, and continue to increase for our producers within the state. So managing those feed costs is a number one priority as I think about how do we increase profitability within the state. When we look at those, this is just total feed expense. So separating out anything else that isn't, this is just total feed expense. Once again, I like to look at that 60 to 70%. So that's that dark green, dark blue, right? You should be right around that 325, 350 per head on feed expense, right? If you were to benchmark up, where do I want to be? And think about the implications that pasture has on that total feed expense. The more productive, the more healthy, the better those pastures are, the more that's going to decrease that overall feed expense. Now, the way that I like to look at some of these, right? So I'm not naive, and I know that there's a cost to any of these, right? Adding fertilizer, management practice, whatever, there's a cost associated with that. So partial budgeting is a very simple tool that helps you analyze the benefits, the economic benefits of making some of these changes, right? So if we want to add land, expand, reduce, change management strategies, add irrigation, any of these types of changes that we want to make on an operation, partial budgeting is a simple way and a very effective way to analyze it. And all partial budgeting does is say, here are the costs, here are the benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the costs, right? Simple strategy to just look at those costs and benefits, and understanding that benefits may occur over time, right? And understanding when those costs may occur as well. Now, when we look at partial budgeting, it's looking at 4 key areas. Does this change in production technique change that you're going to make? Does it increase income? Does it reduce or eliminate some cost? Are there increased costs? Or is there a reduction or elimination of income? So it's looking at those 4 areas, and it looks at the net impact, right? Which we'll look at the net positive, the positive financial changes minus the negative financial changes. And we want to see the outcome of that. So just a simple way to look at, right? And anybody can do this. Here's what I'm doing. Here's was the cost. Here's my estimated potential benefits. Do the benefits outweigh the cost? And if so, we'd say that's a economically good investment, good change to make within your operation. Now, we've done this with a couple of things. This was an improved pasture through grazing strategy, right? Changing carrying capacity, stock density through better management practices. Because of time, I'm just going to just kind of jump to some of the key things here, right? So this was the data that was collected in Sanpete County. You can see one of the key changes, right, with this change in management strategy, improving that pasture, right? Those grazing days increased, the harvested forage increased, right? Stock, right? You can see just those animal units increase. So just the overall increase, the economic impact that has. And when we look at that, right, we can look at what that does. So, and when we look at this capital budget using capital budgeting, which is just, return on investment. So this is analyzed over 10 years, making this change to the investment. And what I did is I analyzed at different values per AUM, right? Because I know that those vary across the state. So, right, if I figured that an AUM is worth $15, right, you're right around the 4 to 5% return on investment. Not that great. At a $21 AUM, you're 28, 29% return on investment. If that AUM is valued at $30, almost a 60% return on investment. So when you talk about positive investments to make on your operation, right, understanding the value of that AUM and understanding the value that you get from making those changes could have dramatic impacts on the overall profitability of your operation. Now, that was quick and dirty. Always, you can reach out to me if you have specific questions or changes you're looking to make. I'm always happy to answer any emails, but you can always reach me here at my email. So hopefully we're close on time, and